All right, guys, welcome back to Within Tolerance. This is episode 16, and I'm joined with Dylan Jackson once again. And we don't have a special guest this week. I think we have one planned for the 29th. Is that correct, Dylan?
Yeah, so everybody listen along. We've got Andrew McEwen, who's known as Laser Scan Man on Instagram. Uh, he worked for Faro for a long time and now works for Altair. And he's going to come on and talk about all things 3D scanning and what he's currently up to, which I believe Altair does a lot of data computation. So a lot of I don't want to misrepresent it, but they do. It seems like a lot of really interesting analysis. So he'll be on the week of the 29th.
Okay, cool. So that's, let's see, 2 weeks from now.
Yep,
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'll be interesting to talk to him.
definitely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it was a few weeks ago, somebody on the Machinist Therapy Hotline was doing a live Instagram story, and they were talking a lot about 3D scanning because somebody was mentioning it. And he was one
Okay.
of the names that actually came up, and I followed him along on Instagram for a while. And we've always actually just barely missed each other at events like IMTS. So I'm looking forward to getting to talk to him and kind of learn more about the whole subject.
Yeah, that'll be great. So I wanted to do one quick shout out. So we're at 541 followers on Instagram right now, which is awesome. I think I need to check like Social Blade, which is a website that tracks those stats, but we've been growing pretty quickly here on Instagram. And then we actually have more listeners on the podcast statistics. I think we're close to, yeah, over 580. So once again, thank you guys for everyone for listening in. And all we ask in return for the podcast is if you guys could share it with one person, post it on your social media, post it on your Instagram stories. We'll repost it so we can get a little bit of sharing going back and forth. But other than that, that's kind of what's going on with intolerance. um, but other than that, how has Dylan been with his work? I know you've been pretty busy.
Yeah, we've been really slammed. We got kind of, I don't want to say that we overbid work, but we just ended up kind of getting behind the eight ball on a lot of little projects. And so that's what I spent this whole past weekend, and the early part of this week working on. Lots of vacuum grills. We finally just finished up our big order of those. The first order running the new pallets. I made the second side one that I told you about to cut out the onion skin that I was leaving,
Okay.
and that worked really well. All the parts, they're probably the best set of grills that we've made yet, and they're all nicely chamfered now from the mill and all that stuff. Um, and we've just had a bunch of onesie twosie stuff that's all been really quick turnaround that we've had to knock out and just get shipped.
That's good. So you're staying on top of it at least as best as you can, it sounds like.
Yeah. I was at the shop last night. I don't know if you saw my Instagram posts or whatever, but cutting with that big 3-inch slitting saw or jeweler saw.
Yeah.
So that was a little sketchy to get into, never having done it. It was like a 23 thou thick, 3-inch diameter, high speed steel slitting saw.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I had to cut through about 800 thou of material, I think it was, thick.
Okay.
And so I posted just to see what everybody would, bring up as their way to go for it. And it kind of split 50-50. It really didn't help my confidence level. Like half the people were like, do it all in one pass, get in, get out, you'll be done. And then the other half were like, I don't know, you're going to probably, bunch up with chips in there with so many tiny teeth. I would take it slow and lighter radial step overs.
Yeah. It's kind of
So,
like, thanks, guys. Come on.
well, and everybody's got different experiences. That's one reason I love the instant machinist community, is that you can get so many different opinions and different viewpoints. And so, I kind of looked at it all. There was one guy who had been running one in a brother, so a 30 taper machine with the same arbor, and he said that he had to run lighter. He ran one at full depth and ran one at lighter radial and had better luck with lighter radial. And there was somebody else who was running one pretty close to my size of saw. And so when I saw those two, I was like, okay, well, I'll try the lighter radial like that. I don't know. It seemed like the safer bet at the time, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sleeper Designs, he was running one that's like, well, it was like 4 or 5 times as thick, but also bigger in diameter, and he was running it about a light radial step over and faster. And there was somebody else who had said the same thing. Uh, and so yeah, I ended up doing like I think 50,000 step overs, 1,000 RPM, and 14 inches a minute, which was like,
Okay.
I don't know, like an 80 millionths chip load or something like that. It was super light. Like, could I have done it way faster? Most definitely. But I only had one part to get out and 4 slots in it to cut. And I was like, well, this seems super safe. Like, if anything, I should be able to hear it start binding up before it does any real damage and just like stop it. I was what
Yeah.
I was hoping, I guess. I don't know if that's at all accurate, but at least that's where my headspace was. And it worked, and it's totally fine. Part was in spec. The saw cut like within a thou of its thickness, so I'm more than happy on how it performed.
That's good. Yeah, and like you said, one part, no reason to even think about that, pushing it.
Yeah, yeah. I actually had 2 setup parts because this was such a quick turnaround, and there were so many different features that were kind of a pain in the ass. Like there was those slots, there was using that 3/16 with a 1 inch length of cut, going down and doing these dog ears in these corners, a whole bunch of
Okay.
stuff that was just kind of a pain. And so I was like, well, stock is cheap. Let me have a couple setups. I don't have time to go back and make any more of these.
Yeah.
So I might go back on my other 2 setup pieces and just try the full depth approach and see if it works.
Okay.
Because it would
Yeah,
have
I
been way
mean, might
faster.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd much rather, I already have the saw. I'm not going to be using it for anything else. I might as well torture test it and kind of figure out what's best.
Yeah. What was that brand of the 3/16 1 inch long tool you had?
AccuPro.
Yep, same one.
Yeah. Like I would have rather a Destiny, but I needed it in a day. And as we both know, MSC's free upgrade, not free upgrade, but you pay the same for the upgrade of overnight as you do for standard shipping. And I might as well.
I'm so glad you told me about that. I used that the other day. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah. In the world of like quick turn prototypes, like I have yet to find anything like it that's remotely as cost effective. Like I've ordered tools overnight from Harvey and Helical before, but I paid like $100 something in shipping.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So yeah, I know that there's a lot of varying sentiments about MSC, but personally, for what they do, like they're great. And really, like if you talk to their customer service team, they are fantastic. Like they
I
took my
agree.
call a few weeks ago. I had placed an order, I thought before the 1 day cutoff, and I needed things Friday or maybe Saturday. No, I needed things Friday, and it wasn't going to be delivered till then following Monday. And so I called them like just before they closed, and they were super nice. Upgraded my order to a Saturday drop off. I mean, not at no cost, but they upgraded it regardless. Got it all taken care of, and I got my tools when I needed them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I definitely can't complain there.
Speaking of Harvey tool,
Hmm.
corner radius tools are amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So besides the non-start at the beginning there when we were talking earlier today, due to my poor tool definition, I think I might have spec'd out a different one, and you bought one with a smaller pilot, or maybe I just wasn't reading the thing right. Anyway, tell us all about your experience. You had a 20 thou radius to put on these new parts. You had talked to me about corner radius tools. You bought one from Harvey at my insistence, and
Yep.
let's hear the rest.
Basically, so one, I didn't want to have to go to Harvey simply because I didn't feel like dealing with the distributor whole spiel. And like we had texted a little bit, but then I was just like, you know what? Let me just try them out. And I had called this distributor. This is the same local distributor for Helical, and I've only bought from them once before. And I don't know if I got a different salesman or whoever I called was just awesome and just like straightforward and really helpful. And got the tools within like I think I did 2 day shipping or something. I think it was like their blue shipping. I can't remember what they said, but got them. Then I tried them out, and like Dylan was saying, I had a little bit of hiccup because he was helping me with the tool paths. But once I got it figured out, I had to call them actually for speeds and feeds just to double check, and a couple other questions I had. But I mean, I think it was 4/10 chip load, 10,000 RPMs, 8 inches a minute. I think it is. Yeah, 8 inches a minute. And it is just beautiful. I could probably go faster. I bought 3 of them, but I mean, the parts are almost done with this op 1. They'll be done in about an hour from now. So I'm not going to push it, but just awesome finish. It lined up literally perfectly first try. So I didn't even bother trying to touch it or comp it or really move it at all. And it is running, and I'm really happy.
Awesome. I mean, that was the one thing. The reason I pushed you towards helical is or on a helical Harvey is that they have such good definitions of their tools. Like I've fought
Yeah.
with corner radius tools in the past where, it won't tell you that little bit on the tip because I think the Harvey one you're using has like a 5 thou tip,
Yep.
and like they won't tell you that, and so you're like, okay, well I'll run it at 0, and then you're like, oh, I got to comp it down, then I got to comp it down, and then I got to comp it in radially a little bit because the tip diameter is not held that well. Whereas so far all the ones I've used from Harvey are like pretty spot on to what they say they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, so far it's running good. And one thing I forgot to mention, it is a 5 times diameter length. So it's a pretty long reach tool. I mean, it's probably reaching down over a quarter of an inch or so. But like you talked about to me, I mean, there's not much force on the tool itself. It's just taking that little corner off.
Yeah. If you were running like 100 thou radius, I would. Well, even then, I wouldn't be all that worried. Like if you think about the material you're actually cutting out, like that corner is really like so little material.
Yeah. So I'm definitely gonna. I have a couple jobs that I had stitched radiuses before in the past, but now if they come back, I'm just gonna go straight to a radius tool simply for time's sake. Because I mean, one, these parts I couldn't have stitched them either way, and it's such a long part. I mean, I think it's like 5 or 6 inches long. So picture a rectangle, and there's 2 edges, so that much length of cut is just so much time to stitch versus these tools. They're a little bit slow, but slow and steady, but they give a great finish, and it's just one shot and you're done.
Right. Yeah. And as the radius goes up too, you can run them significantly faster.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like on those grills, we put a 63 thou radius on there. We've got a 3 flute 63 thou radius cutter that we run at like 60 inches a minute, I want to say.
Okay.
So like, I mean, granted, there's so many slots in those grills that it still takes a while, but it's definitely not the 3/10 chip load or whatever they told you to use.
Yeah, yeah, much faster.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Very
I'm
cool.
glad it all worked out. I'm glad it's. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, for me, it was like, oh, of course, you'd use a radius cutter because like I've used them so often and had to use them so often. But it's cool to fill those gaps in other people's knowledges and to fill those gaps in your own knowledge for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I've just never had experience with them, but now that I had a good experience, I'm not going to be shy about it in the future. And honestly, in the long term, it's going to make me more money because I'm going to save cycle time, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
can't complain there.
Awesome. Well, and you said you had Universal Robots out to your shop yesterday?
Yeah, let's see. Was it yesterday? I think it was. Yeah. So they came out. I went to their distributor. Let's see. I don't even think I've talked about this because that was like Thursday or Friday or something. And we
Oh
did the
yeah.
podcast. So I don't even think I talked about that on air or even with you much other than text.
Oh yeah. That's actually you're right because we were texting a little bit about it. And you had posted videos on your stories, but we hadn't really talked about it.
Yeah, so I went there, I think Thursday or Friday of last week, got a demo with a UR3, which is the little guy, played around with that. Super cool. I was thinking of you when I was programming. I'm like, this is like super fun. I can see how Dylan likes this.
Yeah, it's so
Uh,
easy, isn't it? Like I
oh,
couldn't.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I could not believe how easy everything was.
Yeah, and I'm like, I was just playing with it and just moving it around is so cool. And I mean, they're so quiet. You would think there'd be some noise to it, but it's just silent.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's like the little bit of like joint whine, I guess,
Yeah.
but for the most part, they're super quiet.
Yeah, which is so cool. And then so they had a UR3 set up and I was playing with that. They had a UR5 that was just on a bench like laying down and I was just looking at that for size. And then they had a UR10 out in their shop that I got to go out and just kind of like hand move around using that one button. I didn't bother programming that one, but it was a much bigger robot. And talking to the guys, so it's like, I think the UR5 is a 31-inch reach, if I'm not mistaken. And then the UR10 is like a 50-inch reach. So it's like, I want to say almost 54 or something. It was like close to double. And the price difference between the two is only about ten or $12,000.
Yeah, but
Um,
I mean, when I had them rough quoted, I guess to me they were pretty much $10,000 increments
exactly.
from the UR3.
Yeah, and so that gets you thinking, right? Let's say in a perfect world, okay, I need a robot. It's like, is it worth just spending another 10 to get that extra weight capacity, especially the reach? The weight capacity isn't as much an issue for me. It's the reach would be nice. Because I was just doing some measuring, and then after the guy came out yesterday, we were talking about where would I put the robot in front of my machine, and you start measuring things out, and because you have specific knuckle joints and elbow joints, and 31 inches seems like a long reach, but if you, let's say, had a fourth axis that you wanted to load, or something that's towards the back of your table, I mean, it gets really really close. And for another 10,000 to double that reach almost, and not have to worry about that and get the added weight capacity, it gives you something to think about.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think I told you, I can't remember if it was while we were recording or not, but like we would definitely be getting a 10 if we got
Yeah.
one. By far, just for the sheer mix of stuff that we do, a 5 wouldn't do it for us. Plus, I want that versatility, like you said, to kind of reach into the machine and do whatever I need to do. Um, I know I talked to our distributor, and like one thing that he had said that he'd seen before and that we would probably end up doing if we end up getting one in the future is doing like a mobile cart with the robot on it, and then
Okay.
do a cart with like the kind of cart where the casters come up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where like you can push a button or push a pedal and like the casters come up and it drops onto feet, and then having conical seats on the feet and on the floor so that it locates in the same place every time.
Yeah, so I can't remember his last name, but Troy was the one of the main guys that was a certified, I think, installation tech is his official title at my Universal Robots distributor, and he's actually the owner of Rapid Design Solutions, which is that actuator, that vice actuator that Danny posted.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
and
That's really
so
cool.
yeah, I mean, it was a total small world, and I'd love to have him on because we were talking yesterday for like 3 hours, not only just about what I wanted to do with robotics, but just about like his shop and just like entrepreneur issues, hiring and getting parts made. Like it was just a really cool conversation, and he's really intelligent on that stuff because he's worked in, I think, a job shop, he said, for like 9 or 10 years, so he knows the business. And then he's got the robot, kind of side of things, and he actually has I think it's an Epson robot that he has running machines like 16 hours a day, I think, unmanned.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'd love to get a tour of his place. I'm going to email him about that and then get him on here. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing that I think is very cool about bringing guests on, and like one thing that I think we had talked about in the very beginning of our podcast, is that like I love bringing on instant machinists and people that we wanted to know more about, but I also really wanted to pull in like industry experts or people that are experts in their field, so that we can all learn something together. Like I love having access to those kind of people, asking them questions, really deep diving into what they nerd out about, and that would be really really cool.
Yeah, so I can't remember what was I saying about beforehand, but he came in and we were looking at, okay, for specific parts I had in mind, should I get a UR5, a UR10? And then he's really knowledgeable on how would you actually machine the parts. And some of the parts that I was looking at, it's like, okay, I could get a 5-axis trunnion, run one and done, but then it's one at a time. And it gets tricky to load that because you'd have to have a really tiny little pneumatic vise or something like that. And it was like, I don't feel like spending that much money for a 5-axis trunnion and a robot. So then it's like, what if we just use a fourth axis? And ultimately, we came down to just having 3 vices set up with pneumatic actuators, having a robot move the parts between the vices, just moving them through the 3 ops. And for the one part that I'm thinking of, and we can talk later, Dylan, but the one part I'm thinking of, it would be totally doable. Like, he is very confident that he could do it, um, and help me through the process. And I'll have to send you, if you look up, if anyone's watching or listening to this, go ahead and go to YouTube and look up UR Robots Toolcraft. That's a shop here local in Washington, I think Seattle. And Troy's in that video. He's actually the one that they had a VF2 with a really large order of aluminum parts. And he came in and he basically did a turnkey solution and got them set up. And now that machine runs with a UR robot, I think a UR5, like 16 hours a day. And then through the weekend, completely unmanned. And that's what he does.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see it right here. I'll definitely watch it after we're done.
Yeah, so that's like what he does. So having him being able to guide me, and he was pretty upfront and honest, which was great. He's like, you seem pretty smart and knowledgeable with the text type, type stuff. So like if you get the robot, get the machine running manually, like you would be moving the parts without the robot, get the robot, do what you can to program it. If you need help, let me know, or get it completely running with the robot the way you think it should be ran. And then I can come in and say, you should change this and like fine tune it and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So I'm really excited, and it really gets me excited about machining because if I can automate parts of it that I don't enjoy personally, then it's like that just makes life more fun. I have more time on my hands. And like Jay Pearson says, I have more time to actually run this company side of things.
Oh, totally. Well, and like, I mean, I don't think anybody enjoys running, 10,000 of a part or whatever.
Yeah,
So like, yeah, it's not just you. Like it's automating something that if there is the technology to do it, humans shouldn't do it anymore.
exactly. Yeah.
So that's great. I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing that progress and where you go with all this.
Yeah. And now I'm kind of in a low key panic mode of, okay, if this machine gets automated, which would be so cool, what do I do about all my other customers that are going to continue to send me parts? Because I'm not going to want to tear down that setup.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, I looked
I
at
mean,
that one robo drill on eBay, and like I told you, all the coolant system is like its own separate thing, which I don't know if that's just for the old ones, or I'm not too sure about that, but that just wouldn't work because then it's like basically having two machines because it's taking up that much footprint space.
did they send you the size of it? Because like the one at our work, we've got. I mean, probably the same year Robo Drill, and it comes out the back a little bit, but not that much. Not much past the cabinet.
I'd have to send you a picture. It was like a 2009, I want to say. Um, but yeah, it was weird. It was like picture the phone booth style robo drill, and then picture that same size, but all the coolant like tank and conveyor was like right next to the machine. It wasn't under the machine.
Oh, it's got a conveyor too.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's probably yeah. We don't have conveyors at work, so maybe it's a
Okay.
different tank for that. That would
Okay,
make
that
more
might be
sense.
it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, like, I know you had talked about, or we had talked about you getting another machine, but in the meantime, if you needed to get up and running too, you could buy a bunch of fifth axis or Lang base plates and put all your robotic fixtures on those and then some vices on those. And that way you could hot swap between the robot program and doing one offs if you really needed to.
I was thinking of that, and I was honestly even thinking about just buying three Pearson systems, putting the vices and whatever I need for the robot job on those, and then I have three pallet bases that I can have a vice on if I need to, or just do normal pallet type work if needed, um, and just hot swap those.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Anything like that would work totally fine, I think, for what
And
you're
I
you're looking
really
for.
like the idea of I think it was Jay Pearson, but if I had, let's say, three Pearson pallets on a table, and let's say I found the origin of like the pins and modeled everything in Fusion, like it would be so nice to program because it could literally just be like plug and play it because everything's based off the same origin,
Oh yeah, yeah, totally.
which would be really cool.
Yeah, it would be really really nice. And like that's where you can teach your robot a position too. So if you do move it, you can just bring it back into position and teach it that global coordinate, and then everything can be based off of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's. It sounds like you've got a lot of decisions coming up.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think there are really cool decisions, but I don't know that I envy you having to make so many so quickly.
I agree.
Um, yeah, but that should be cool. I'm really looking forward to. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you decide and what you end up getting and all that stuff.
Yeah, I just thought of what I was going off a tangent, but I thought of what I was thinking of. You had mentioned a cart system to put in front of your machines if you got a robot.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
Troy at Rapid Design Solutions, he makes a cart that actually has picture like these steel hockey pucks that you put on the ground in front of your machine and you screw them down to the floor on your concrete. And this cart, it's like picture like a Lang plate. Like those stay on the concrete and the cart can wheel on and off of it. And, it's within like less than a thou. And that way you can move your robot back on there and more or less just hit restart and on your saved program and just be off and running.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I want to do with the conical seats and all that. Except those are dug into the pavement
Okay.
rather than bolted on. But yeah, and like the way I had envisioned it is like getting something like the Pearson system or a Lang, because then you can buy, especially for the 96 millimeter type tooling, you can buy the master pallets, or you could make a master pallet that would fit on the robot's hand and just like lock that into one of the Lang plates or fifth axis plates, and then just say this is now your global zero for both machines.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so all you'd have to do is attach that hand, walk it into the pallet, lock it in, and just say, okay, reset zero, take it off, put the gripper back on or whatever, and hit go, and they're ready to run.
Yeah, that sounds smart.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's what's so cool about robotics and also so difficult is that there is just endless possibilities. Like not even
Yeah.
being hyperbolic or anything. Like there are so many ways to skin that cat. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that just makes it so much more fun, I think.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's what we've talked about. What we both like of prototyping is that it's that solving that puzzle. Finding your own way to do it, doing it, executing it, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, that's great. So, what's on tap for the rest of this week? I mean, I guess we're Wednesday already, but do you have more job shop work you're getting out?
Yeah, I got those two aluminum parts that I got to do. I should be done with op 1s on one of them. Op 1 is exactly 10 minutes long. So it's like I've got enough time where I can load it and I'll walk upstairs, do some computer work, and then walk downstairs every 10 minutes and swap it out.
Nice. Yeah, that's just long enough to be useful.
Yeah, so I ran one right before we started, and I think I've got six more, so like an hour's worth or so. And I'll be done with that specific part today, and then probably run op ones on the other part tomorrow, which I think will be a little bit longer because I'm using pretty much on that whole part. It's really thin wall, and it's going to be all, I think, 5/64ths and eighth inch tools
Oh
for
wow.
pocketing out some of these pockets, but I'm not too intimidated because in the grand scheme of things, those are pretty big tools to me and I know kind of the limits of them and they're actually pretty strong tools, but these ones have some long length of cuts, like quarter inch and half inch length of cuts.
Yeah, that's what I found so funny of you being so hesitant to use the corner radius tool. Is I was like, this
Oh
is the
yeah.
guy who runs like the tiniest end mills, like or at least in my eyes, some of the tiniest end mills that I would be comfortable using all the time. And yet you're like, well, I don't know, I'm worried about this thing, and I'm like, just run it. Like, what are you gonna do?
And that was another thing I was going to mention is the Harvey tools. I bought three of them because they aren't that expensive, and that's what really shocked me.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of their tools that are middle of the road expensive. It's only when you get into the really specialty stuff that I think it gets significantly more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, this must be somewhat standard because they were like $20 a piece or something. Like, it wasn't much.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and they're fairly small too, so it's not all that much carbide. It makes sense. It's just yeah, it was the whole thing was so funny. Like I was sitting there like, what?
This
Like,
guy.
yeah, this what? So just run it, dude. Like,
Well, yeah, I ran it, then it didn't cut, and then I really was scratching my head.
yeah, that was my bad.
No, you're totally fine.
I'll take responsibility for that one.
I was looking at it. I'm like, wait a minute here. This tool doesn't look like the tool I'm holding, and that's really what set it off.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather it be that than the other way around, though.
Yeah, seriously.
But
So
I was definitely scratching my head as well. You were texting me all this stuff. I was like, I don't know. It looks like it's set up right. Like I don't know what you want from me.
yeah, no, but those are running, and then yeah, I got to finish those up, and then I mentioned to you briefly those casted steel parts might be coming back.
That's exciting, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I'm gonna have to requote them because the original quote was for a quantity of like 200 parts, and they only gave me like 50, and so I kind of was just doing that as a favor. And I told them because they asked me, they're like, "Can you make more of these? We're kind of in a pinch." And I'm like, "Well, I can, and I totally will, but I'm gonna have to requote them because it's a really high risk, low pay job for me. Because if I break one of their key cutter tools that they let me borrow, it's like a $200 tool, and there goes a lot of profit.
Right. Yeah.
So I gotta, I don't know how many they're gonna give me. I'm assuming at least another 50, probably close to 100. I would assume because they mentioned they were getting like I don't know, maybe 100 more castings. So I don't know if they're gonna send all of them my way and do some in house. I'm not too sure, but that's gonna happen sometime in the next probably week.
Sweet. Well, that's nice.
Yeah,
I mean, you've
so
already cut them. Like, there's nothing to be worried about anymore.
yeah, it's just I need to look into my drilling speeds and feeds because those drills were getting beat up. Tapping was fine. Um, the counter bores and machining flats with an end mill was totally fine, but I got to look into that drilling speeds and feeds more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, now you know how much you like carbide drills too.
Seriously, yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah. I think you are gonna knock this one out of the park, no problem.
Yeah, so
And now
that's
you know how to
happening.
set, or not know how to, but you figured out that you need to segregate them for that whole op since the castings vary so much. Put them in groups.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if these are as bad or worse. I don't know if they went with the same casting company or not, but
Did we
I
ever
think
talk about that on here?
I don't know if we did or not.
Well, do you want me to describe it, or do you want to describe it? I think I remember the problem, but
Yeah, go
it's
for
a
it.
so the castings Payton was machining had. I don't remember if you said the print had actual cast datums or not, or if they were just asking you to center the hole on the casting.
More or less.
Yeah, but the castings varied, what, 30 thou, something like that? 30,
I
40
mean,
thou?
some were up to 50, yeah.
Yeah, and so we were talking about it through text. And one thing I've learned in my day job, because we deal with a lot of castings, was to group them into separate groups that are all close in tolerance. So he was trying to hold, I think you're trying to hold, what, 10 thou is what you were self imposing on your uh, all your parts just to make
Yeah,
them look uniform.
yeah.
So you group them in 10 thou sized groups so that when you're done with one group, you can offset for the next group, and all of the next ones in the next group will all run within your tolerance band. And you can
Yeah.
continue to do that through all your groups. And as long as you measured them right, you should end up with, 100% good parts.
Yeah, I was actually even grouping them more like every 3 thou or so. So I was a little bit tighter just to be safe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really depends on your tolerance band and how tight you want to keep them. Um, but yeah, grouping parts when you have no control over them is a really good way to make sure I mean, if you had a probe, like it, obviously you wouldn't need to group them. But like for people that don't have probes or don't want to sit there and indicate each one or edge find each one, grouping them like that works fantastically.
Yeah, and I think like I think I might have mentioned this. It's picture like a U. That's what the part looked like. It was like a band clamp looking part, And I think what happened is in heat treat, that band opened up, making them some longer, some shorter, and that's what was really causing a lot of headache for me and then the customer. But luckily, the customer was happy with them, and they knew about it because I told them about it before I machined them, and they were just supposedly they work. They got anodized and they got shipped, on the assemblies, and they're fine. But they were talking to their casting company about figuring out what was going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, casting houses are kind of a crapshoot anyway. Like there are a few good ones in the U.S., but for the most part, like you're gonna end up with a lot of garbage.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've found.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's a reason that a lot of aerospace parts and a lot of parts in general are just moving to hog out, billet made parts from a casting.
Yeah, just because there's more control.
Well, control and like sourcing, like some casting houses have 40 to 60 week lead times.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so like you're ordering castings for next year, kind of stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And granted, that's not all of them, and it's not every casting, but like the more complex your casting goes, the more you want of them, yada yada yada. Like yeah, I've seen some crazy lead times that you're just like, how am I supposed to make parts? How am I supposed to do anything? So yeah, it makes sense why a lot of these companies are just going to billet because you can source that anywhere. Like even if it's an expensive piece, it's still sourceable within a couple weeks usually. At worst.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so casted parts coming up, and then those aluminum parts. I changed in Fusion the one tool path that I was using the shear hog on, these big aluminum parts, to just a 1/2 inch end mill. I have a helical one that has like some serrations on it that I want to try. Um, it added like a minute to 2 minutes of cycle time, but I talked about it briefly. Is I don't want a noise complaint for that 2 minutes that the shear hog is running.
yeah, yeah,
And so,
it'll definitely cut down on the noise. Shear hogs are by no means the quiet tools.
no. And I mean, I'm curious to see how fast I can push it, the end mill. I could probably push it faster, but I don't know. It'll be interesting how loud it is. I'm wondering because I haven't really used those much. The ones with the serrations to break the chips, make them smaller, and then I think it's also supposed to lower your tool pressure, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can see the decrease in spindle load. Like we didn't use roughing end mills for the longest time, and then switching from I mean I've said before we use pretty much all Destiny stuff for aluminum, and switching from their Viper, which is just like a standard 3 flute end mill, to one of their Diamondbacks, which is the rougher, like that we've seen maybe for the same speeds and feeds, same step over 5 or 10% reduction
Okay,
in spindle load.
that's not bad.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good for just changing a tool, and it lasts way longer because it's got a corner radius, and there's a heaps of other benefits, but lower spindle load is definitely one of them.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see how that runs. Hopefully that'll help on noise. And I've been running. I'm so mad because tomorrow's Thursday. I did get that Technics really short, stubby ER32 collet tool
Sweet.
holder, and so I'm really excited. I have that command tooling fan, and I'm really wishing I had that because the part I'm working on now it's basically a bowl and it just holds coolant.
Yep.
And I wish I had that today, but
Yeah, get a whole face full of coolant.
yeah.
Yeah, it's somebody had actually commented on our Instagram, or not commented, but sent a message that they said you can hold one of those in a solid holder as well and cut down the shank if need be.
Yeah.
So that's always a possibility as well. I know we can't really spare any tool positions right now, but I'd love one of those chip fans for some of our parts.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think I made a Mari tool order and that should be here tomorrow. I bought a bunch of tool holders, so I'm kind of all giddy about that.
Oh boy, bunch of
Yeah.
standard stuff or special stuff. What'd you get?
Let's see. Just a couple more ER16 and then some longer gauge length ER32. I've found that I'm really liking ER32 lately just because it's not a solid end mill holder. I try to stray away from those. I've heard mixed things about them, but then I've also heard mixed things about the Collets. But so I think there's like, it's like, I want to say 6 or 8 tool holders coming. And then I can't remember what else I bought. I think some pull studs that I never had. But I was really shocked because I had ordered originally like close to 20 tool holders from them when I got my machine. And I've been able to make do with the exact ones I bought for this long. And right now I'm really just buying out of necessity. So, and just to have. So I'm kind of spoiling myself. But I was shocked at how, I mean, I've made it a year without having to buy more.
That's awesome.
So trying to live frugally as much as possible.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, especially when some of those things, like having more tool holders, are like such a uh, what do I want to like a life, an ease of life thing.
Yeah.
I know every time we buy new tool holders and I get to set them up, it's like, oh man, now I've got all these extra ones. I'm not hunting or I'm not pulling stuff out of the machine, and it's so much easier and so much nicer to have a few extra holders.
Yeah. So I'm excited about all that. So a little bit of tooling coming in, but other than that, I'm staying pretty busy. Are you just doing more one-offs and stuff this week?
Yeah, we've got a repeat job from one of our customers. It's some little handles that we've done 2 or 3 times now. We've got I've got like a prototype that I designed for the local BMW shop for one of
Oh,
the
cool.
mechanics there. We do those throttle body cams for him, and now we're possibly going to do another product for him. I got to knock that out this weekend. I've got 2 more RFQs that just popped up into my inbox like at 5 o'clock today, so I got to answer those and hopefully get those
Nice.
rolling. And yeah, I feel like we've just got a whole bunch of projects too that need to be done. So I'm looking forward to it. One thing, going back to tooling, and one thing I don't think we've brought up in the podcast, but Easton from Mariah Manufacturing reached out to us a month ago, because we had both been talking about needing tool tightening fixtures, and he sent us both one of his. Uh, I finally just got mine mounted up last week or the week before, and absolutely love it. Like for what it is, it's so quick and simple, and like we've been making do with our crappy one that's been held in a bench vise for so long that having something rigidly mounted that's quick and easy has been really really nice. Like, have you been using yours a lot?
Oh yeah, I mounted. So you've got the 30 taper one, right?
Yeah, but I think they're pretty much identical, just different sized.
Yeah, so I've got the 40 taper one, but I love it. I just have the standard kind of sheet metal one off the side of the Haas, like little bench thing on the side of the shelf. And it works, but like I've talked about before, it's really sketchy when you're tightening a tool because there's a really sharp sheet metal edge of that shelf. And if your hand or knuckle slipped, like it's gone, like you're done.
Right.
And so being able to mount this on just a workbench and get away from that. It's awesome. And like you said, I was always worried that it'd be slow. You'd have to crank the handle a bunch of times, but it's like half a turn or something. It's tight. You do what you need to do. Half turn, boom, you're out and you're ready to go.
Yeah, definitely, and they're really relatively well priced. So anybody looking for one should definitely head over to Easton and you know pick one up because they good quality. I really enjoy it. There's not much you can really ask for from a tool tightening fixture. I think it does everything that I want, and that's pretty much everything.
Yeah, and it looks good too.
Yeah. The anodize is really nice. Everything looks great. Uh, the machining's really good looking too. So thanks, Easton.
Yeah, seriously, thank you. I know me and him text every now and then, and yeah, once I got mine mounted, and then I was like, I think I texted you, and I was like, when are you getting yours mounted? And you were kind of like really busy at the time, but I'm glad to hear that you got yours mounted and you like it as much as I do.
Yeah. We Brad and I were there over the weekend, and I was working on the grills and didn't have anything really set up for Brad to run or anything. Like I
Okay.
there was nothing that I wanted him to program. There was nothing that for him to at least at that moment. And so I was like, hey, why don't you take this piece of stock and drill and tap 4 quarter 20s and we can get that mounted. And so we got it knocked out, and then we both went, back to work, and both were loading tools through it, which was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a real big help. It's again one of those luxuries that you don't really know that you need until you have it. Like, man, how do I live without this?
Yeah, quality of life goes up.
Yeah, there you go. Quality of life. That's the words I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think we're
so
both suffering from stress and lack of sleep, it sounds like.
yeah, pretty much.
Oh man.
Yeah, who needs sleep? What was it you texted me the other day? You're like, I think this is actually last week. I can't believe a week's already gone by, first of all.
Yeah.
Um, that's crazy. But you were like, because you were like hesitant on the podcast if you had time. You're like, screw it. Who needs sleep? I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm like,
Yeah.
that a boy. That's the attitude.
Yeah, the last few weeks has been like that. Many 12 o'clock, 1 a.m. nights at the shop, and trying to just make sure I am a functioning human being at my day job during the day, which I've done a pretty good job. Like I'm programming some pretty intense stuff and running some pretty intense stuff, and I haven't done anything really stupid yet, so I
That's
can't
good.
I can't complain. Yeah, it's
Yeah, they're still employing you, which is good.
right. Yeah, yeah, they still like me. I was
Yeah, exactly.
troubleshooting a lot of machines and probing and all kinds of stuff. My job, I I'm in the engineering department, but I'm kind of like the go-to, just float around and do everything and anything that comes up.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that I'm still able to function on a few hours of sleep.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah, sleep or lack of sleep and lots of coffee. That's my equation for it, I guess.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. And running expensive pieces of equipment.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All
Uh,
right. Well, I don't know about you, but I've got parts to make.
yeah. I've got lots of quotes to get done and some programming to get done. So let's. I think this is going to be our shortest one yet.
I don't know. I thought we had like a 45-minute one.
Oh, maybe.
But anyways, yeah, that'll do it for episode 16. If you guys are interested, send in more questions. I know we haven't really asked that much, but once again, make sure you guys follow us on Instagram Within Tolerance Podcast. Post on your stories. We'll go ahead and repost that as long as you tag us. Just makes it a little bit easier. And Dylan, is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thanks for following along, guys. Thanks for listening to us. Lack of sleep ramble today. I think one thing to bring up that was kind of cool is Cam Instructor named us one of his top 4 machinist podcasts today, which I just wanted to reach out and do a thank you shout out for that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was really cool.
We were both pretty surprised, and it was a really cool thing to get in the middle of the day. I think that's Matt, I want to say, from Cam Instructors. Yeah, Mike. So thanks, Mike. We appreciate you listening. And yeah, thanks for listening along, guys. Have a great night.
All right, guys. See you next week.